everybody. I'm super excited about today's show. We have an amazing lady on the show, Crysta Tyus. And I'm going to let Krista jump in and give even more of her background as well, because she has just an incredible story. We met last year, and we kind of do similar things. We teach and have programs. And Krista was putting on an amazing event, which we're going to dive in deep to. That was really one of the best events. I mean, maybe the best event of all 2021, in my opinion. And so I want to dive into that as well. But first, let's spend some time getting to know Krista. And I really want to dive in because you got a lot of stuff going on, not just on the event side, the teaching side. You've got software you're developing. But let's start with maybe your backstory, because it's pretty amazing. You can tell as little or as much as you want to, but I think people love your story. And so I want to make sure we get time to share that.
Well, thank you, Andrew. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And yeah, so I am an enrolled agent by the Internal Revenue Service. I started my own tax and accounting firm back in 2012. And that's when, initially I was looking at just becoming a registered tax preparer, right? Because I knew CPA was just going to be too long. It was a very long process. I was like, I just need to know enough to start this business. And I remember going on the journey of trying to figure out how to become a registered tax preparer. I got the books off of Amazon, started going down this journey, and I stumbled upon a term called enrolled agent. And I'm like, well, what is this? And so after learning more about it, I was like, wow, this is the highest licensure that the Internal Revenue Service honors that individual. And that seemed much more, special to me at that time. So I went on that journey of becoming an EA and haven't looked back since. So I started my business directly from banking. I used to work at Bank of America, Chase Bank, and I went directly into starting my tax and accounting business. Never worked for any tax and accounting firm, didn't know what the heck I was doing. I was 23 years old, so completely.
You just started for yourself. You didn't.
Yes, I just started for myself, right? And so 23 years old, you can imagine that I learned a lot the hard way over the past 10 to 12 years. By the grace of God, I was able to figure something out, right? And so I ended up growing my tax and bookkeeping business to 6 figures, the alluring 6 figures that everybody tries to get to. But I still found myself broke. So one of the things that, I'm like, I'm really good at helping other people with their bookkeeping and their finances, but I wasn't so good, with my own finances. So I had to really learn how to save my own money, how to manage my money, because I really feel like they don't teach us that, like how to manage our own money, right? I think we're really great at helping our clients, but when it comes to our own thing, it's just like we fall to the wayside. Just like there's a analogy that I like to say, the brain surgeon can't do brain surgery on himself. Like sometimes as tax and accounting pros, like we don't have enough energy to tackle our own financial picture sometimes, but I had to learn how to do that because it was really important for me to not only make 6 figures, but also, be profitable at the end of the day. So I took what I learned and just started helping my clients. A lot of people saw how I was becoming successful. A lot of my colleagues in the industry from like Bank of America, Chase Bank, they started reaching out to me. They were like, hey, can you teach me how to get into taxes, right? Because everyone wanted to make money on the side, kind of like today's economy. Like everyone is looking for an additional opportunity. And I naturally just started getting into helping my friends for free, helping them learn taxes. And that turned into what I do now, right? What I do now is help a lot of tax and accounting pros around the world just really learn how to market themselves, right? Learn how to use social media and scale to their first 6 figures.
Okay, well, that's just an awesome story and amazing starting so young as well. And just kind of teaching yourself and then helping others. And it's really kind of the same way I got into teaching too. People just started coming to me and saying, hey, can you help me start this on the cannabis accounting or whatever? And it's really, that's the best way any company starts. And I think, maybe that's why I resonated with you so quickly, because there's other people out there that are just like, Oh, I think it's great to be a teacher and you can make a ton of money, and not even just in accounting. I mean, you see our feed, life coach and weight coach and all these people, and they're like, yeah, like someone's a life coach and they're 22 and they have no life experience and they're going to teach me how to do things. So that's amazing to hear. And then on the EA, on the tax side, um, and doing tax returns and whatnot. It's great that you built that business. Did you have a whole bunch of clients at first, or because tax is kind of unusual compared to like general accounting, because a lot of times you just have that client in April or whatever. And then was it super seasonal too, or did you find ways to kind of bring them in over the other months?
Absolutely. So my first tax season was 2013, and I got about 80 clients that year. It was like about 80 to 90 clients.
Wow.
And a lot of that was just like reaching out to friends, family, sphere of influence, people I used to go to high school with, go to college with. Like I tried to reach out to everyone I knew. And those first like 80 clients were my sphere. And unfortunately, I tell people like I only made probably about $8,000 or if that, because I was only charging like $75 per tax return. That's a whole nother story, right? But I knew, and I learned from the hard way very quickly, right after tax season, that money did not last me long. And by June, I was broke. And so I said, okay, this is not how I thought it was going to go. Like in my mind, I thought I was going to make like $40,000, which was my salary at the bank. And I said, I can live off that, right? If I make 40,000 in a tax season, I can just ration out my and pay myself. And unfortunately, there were overhead expenses that I didn't account for in this calculation. So now I had a brick and mortar, because back in the day, that's how you opened up your tax and accounting business. You actually had a brick and mortar. So I had a lease, I had utilities, I had marketing expenses, I had an assistant. And so at the end of the day, like I learned really fast. I was like, I am in trouble. I had already quit my 9-to-5 job. I didn't have any savings, which I don't recommend anyone listening to do. Don't quit your job and not have at least 6 months to a year saved up for yourself and your family.
Great advice.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what I discovered, I was like, I need monthly recurring income. I need to find some income fast. And so that's when I was introduced to bookkeeping. I said, you are going to learn bookkeeping, whether you like it or not. And I self-taught myself that too. I went on QuickBooks. I became a QuickBooks Pro advisor. I was actually going to become a certified bookkeeper. I don't remember what the certification is, but it's the main bookkeeping certification. That they give, that you could go through. And that was like pretty much in 2013, the only, reputable thing that you could pretty much buy outside of going to community college or something like that. So I got all of these like books on like debits and credits and journal entries and some like studying, trying to figure out bookkeeping. And lo and behold, by the grace of God, again, I get my first bookkeeping client, and I'm completely terrified, because I'm like, I've never actually did bookkeeping for a client. And I ended up figuring it out. I was like, okay, if you mess up, then you're just gonna let the client know, or we have to figure something out. And then I get a client that calls me out of the blue. I have no idea how he got my number. He says, hey, we're looking for a bookkeeper. We're a property management company. We have about 90 plus homes in our portfolio, and we need a bookkeeper to help us get caught up. We're actually behind. And when he's explaining all this to me, I'm like immediately intimidated. I'm like, I just started bookkeeping. I cannot work with a company that's $1 million company, has 70 plus properties, and it's in real estate, which I didn't even know about a niche back in the day, first of all. So I'm like, I know nothing about real estate and property management accounting. And so this was going to be like a $40,000 per year client, right? Because he was telling me how much they were paying his last bookkeeper, and it was about $40,000. I was like, holy crap, I can have one client and make my whole salary that I was making at the bank with this one client and work from home. And so unfortunately, I told the client no. I said, I was like, unfortunately, I just started bookkeeping. I really don't feel confident to do that. And he was actually disappointed. He was, because obviously he probably like my personality. Like I'm like a very positive and optimistic person, but I'm gonna tell you if I don't know it. I was like, I just don't feel comfortable. And I remember going back to my girlfriend, a really great friend who's actually a life coach at the time. And I told her, I was like, yeah, I just walked away from this $40,000 a year bookkeeping client. And she looks at me, she's like, why? I'm like, because I don't feel confident like in doing the job. And she said, well, did you feel confident when you took on your role at Bank of America when you first started? Did you know everything that you needed to know to work at Bank of America? I said, no. She was like, did you learn as you went? And did you become really great at your job? I said, yeah, I got a raise and a promotion every year when I was at Bank of America. That's how good I was at my job. And she was like, well, this time is like that time. She was like, you're not going to know everything. You're not going to feel 100% confident. And she's like, you need to go back and tell him that you're going to take him on as a client. And I'm like, this is ridiculous to me. I'm like, I'm not about to go to this $1 million company to say, whoops, I was scared. And now I'm not scared anymore. Right? And so she's like, no, do it. She was like, the worst he can say is no. And she was like, in this case, you don't have a job anyway. Like, he's not your client anyway. And so I go back to this guy who was an international client too. He actually had dual residency in another country. And I tell him, I said, you know, I made a mistake yesterday telling you that I couldn't do this job. After further review, I actually went in my QuickBooks and I played around with the chart of accounts. Like I was letting him know that I actually, I started to research property management accounting, which is true. Like I spent hours the night before, like creating mock property management companies and like trying to figure out how to do it. And I was like, but I'm confident now that I can actually, do this work for you. And he paused for a second and he was just like, okay, we're going to go with you. We're going to try it out. We're going to try it out. So he was my first big client. And just with him, I learned so much with accounting, with bookkeeping, with journal entries, with, invoices, accounts receivable, accounts payable. Like he was my first like full charge bookkeeping client. And from there, it was like sky was the limit. Sky was the limit.
That is just, an awesome story. And there's so much to unpack and all that. And so really, and we're still, by the way, everyone, on question number 1. But this goes right into it. So the question, what are unique skills and traits you bring? And so I'm already like ticking things off as you say all this stuff. And it's just a great inspiration to others. And I think sometimes people don't get, it's like they're focused on the wrong thing. They're like, oh, I need an accounting degree or a CPA behind my name or an EA or whatever it is, letters. And a lot of times the skills are more important, but what are some of the skills maybe that you had way back then at 23 and all through all the EA and the new client? What were some of these skills and traits you had that really served you well, even though you were maybe light on accounting knowledge?
Absolutely.
But you had other traits you were big on.
You know what, Andrew? The biggest trait was the willingness to learn and to go above and beyond. So I'm surprised by the amount of questions that I get, such as, how do I work with a client that needs an I-10? And I'm like, well, let's go to irs.gov, let's type in I-10 and let's pull up the instructions. And so for me, even at 23, 24 years old, I was always, and I really think I got this from the banking center because they trained us on, it was so many different policies in banking that we had to adhere to. And if we did not adhere to it, ignorance was not an excuse, right? To save your job. So if I wasn't sure about if I should do a certain transaction with the client, I had to go pull up what they call policies and procedures. And I had to research, well, what is a policy when a client comes in and they're trying to negotiate this check that's over a certain amount with only one piece of ID, right? Because if I didn't, I was out of a job. And I think that skill set of researching something because my tail was on the line, I took that into tax and accounting. And so even if I got clients that were, had a trust or an estate or an I-10 or, my first Schedule C client, I was not a stranger to actually go to irs.gov and actually read the instructions, right? But like the instruction is already there. Like they tell you exactly how this needs to be done. And yes, it can be cumbersome and very bland in reading, but I think the ability to just learn and the ability to research on your own is going to help all of tax and accounting pros figure it out. Like just have the attitude to say, hey, I don't know it, but let me go figure it out, and let me go find somebody that probably knows it as well.
And not being able to be authentic. And still today, it's like, I just tell, oh, I don't know that, but I'm
Right.
part of an amazing community, and I'm going to go find out for you. And even when I was a brand new beginner, in my story where I went all over the place, but back to night school and whatnot, and I got a job at Price Waterhouse, and I walk in at day one or whatever, and I'm 30 or 31, and most everyone else is 21, but it's still, I remember them telling you, yeah, you go brag, we're number one. Doesn't matter that you're on day one, you can still brag about that. But a couple of interesting points too, that I was thinking about. So it is interesting. So this recording is actually going to come out. We're on Valentine's Day, I believe, but we're recording on Martin Luther King Day, which is another amazing and more amazing day even. But one thing, so I actually posted Dr. Martin Luther King on my Instagram today, and one of my favorite quotes about, if you can't fly, you can run. If you can't run, you can walk. If you can't walk, crawl. You need to always move forward. And when I see you, I'm like, that story is like, I'm just going, what's next? Okay, I'm stuck here. I'm going to go around. I'm going to go forward. And even last year when you talked to me in October or whenever, and you're like, I'm going to put on this huge event in Orlando. And I'm like thinking, are you sure? Are you sure about this? It's only like 2 months away, and you're going to get and pull it together. But I love that. Just like, I would have been way too terrified to even consider pulling that off, and you pulled it off in an amazing way. I even mentioned you, by the way, I was on the AICPA planning call last week for their national conference, and theirs was last year in November, and they were going to move it up to August. And there was this big argument between people about, oh, there's no way we can pull this off in 8 months. And we had a committee of like 20 people.
Oh,
and
wow.
and I'm like, well, I was like, guys, Krista pulled off the conference. And I was like, oh, by the way, it was better than the AICPA conference by a long shot. And you only needed a couple months. So,
All right. Thank
so
you.
have you always had those kind of go-getter skills, and just like, you just got to keep moving?
Absolutely, absolutely. And honestly, that is I think a very strong attribute that I probably had since a very young age. Was I really never was afraid to fail. So even with that conference, which cost multiple six figures to put on just in 60 days, I looked at the upside and I looked at the downside. I said, okay, worst case scenario, I'll lose a couple $100,000. And I said, can we afford that? Is that going to be detrimental to the company? How can we recoup that, right? And so once I really weighed like the pros and cons, I really realized that the upside was greater than the downside, right? Like cash comes and goes. Like cash is replenishable in my mind, right? Like it's just as fast as I get rid of it, it's going to come back to me. And so I think a lot of people don't weigh the pros and cons to the situation. They just look at the con, like, oh my God, I could lose a couple $100,000, or oh my God, this is going to be embarrassing, or I'm going to be perceived a certain way, or whatever like the con is in their mind. And that prohibits them from actually taking action and like doing the thing. And for me, it was just like, no, we're going to do the thing. We're going to try to put on the best of what we can in 60 days, and try to, think about all of the logistics and like, just all the possibilities. And this was my first time even throwing a conference, right? And so I was at a huge disadvantage on knowledge. And then, so what I did was I was really able to hire people and get people to assist me in this process that were more knowledgeable than me. So that's the other trait, is if you don't know something, there's always, like you said, mentorship, a community, or a hire that is literally a few clicks away now, thanks to the internet, where you don't have to know everything to get a job done now. So,
and building a team. And so we'll get on. So we're kind of already jumping on the conference and a couple of things about that. Yeah, building a team is something that I've always sometimes been weak when I'm on my own and just like, oh, I want to do that myself and I can't hand that off to anybody. So that's a skill I need to definitely improve on. And I know, like, I don't know all your team, but like Rachel, I know was just absolutely amazing as well. But one other thing when we hit skills and traits, because I talk to lots and lots of accountants on the phone, thousands of them, and most accountants, not all, are like, oh, I'm so introverted. I hate marketing. I hate sales. I hate talking to people. I want to be in my bedroom doing accounting. And I know you're not like that. And you're not only, and maybe is that just you got lucky, you're kind of extroverted and can go out in front of people, and whether it's speaking or doing social media, like you got a huge following on Instagram. Did you just learn that naturally, or did it come naturally?
Yeah, no, I was not a natural at this. Actually, in fact, I would consider myself introverted for most of my life, right? Like I was the shy girl in high school that wore her hair down to cover her face. Like I look like the lady from the Addams Family, right? Like
Yeah.
I would just cover my face. I didn't want to be seen. I wore baggy clothes. I had like this little mousy voice, so I'm very much introverted. At least that's where it started. But when I actually started to do my marketing, I was even more like, I was nervous, like my first video was terrible, right? My first 30 videos on Facebook were terrible. Like I kept saying a lot. I was stuttering.
Yeah.
I was just a mess the whole time. But I think the thing that has helped me is that I didn't stop. Like even when I was really bad, I didn't stop doing the thing. I didn't stop marketing. I didn't stop putting myself out there. I just kept practicing. And I was really intentional about practicing, right? Even when it comes to like live video or doing a podcast or doing a YouTube video, like it's a muscle that we haven't worked before. Like we haven't, like there's a muscle to look at a lens and talk to it, right? And then, create a story or to, create value for the end consumer. And that takes time. So I tell people to give yourself some grace, right? Like even at the conference, I didn't want to come out and speak at my own conference. I was definitely nervous, Andrew. My clients were back there. They were like, you have to go on stage. Like, you cannot throw this event and not grace the stage. But even then, I was just so scared of whatever I was scared of. But again, it was just like, I did it scared, right? I stepped out scared to death and I just started to flow, right? So it doesn't get better.
Well, a couple of things on that, and then this is kind of leading us into the conference, because I've been scared as well. I'm just going to make a note so I don't forget. I was terrified of that conference too. I've now spoken on stages, trying to think, I don't know, maybe 20 times, and some of them are smaller, some of them are bigger, and different. Like at Orlando, there was just a lot of people, and I was kind of the first one to go out, and so I was pretty terrified as well. The audience was amazing. Same at AICPA. Before that, it was smaller, but the AICPA conference, there was like, I knew it was like, okay, these are senior partners at national firms and they're going to come in there and be like raising your hand saying, Andrew, you are all wrong. That's not how you do cost accounting. And so it was terror for another reason. Yeah. And I remember I went to one semester at Arizona State only, and I took this communications class, and this was like in 1983, long time ago. And I can remember a couple things in that class. One, there's only like 10 people in it. And I remember the teacher saying, Andrew, trust me, communications is going to be the industry of the future. And when I look back now and you think of the internet and Apple phones and chatting and communications was it. But we had to give a 5-minute talk on something in front of like 6 people or something, but I still remember the terror. That was over 40 years ago. And I still remember that terror and thinking, I will never speak in public ever. But if you're actually confident about your topic and you're just telling your story, it gets easier and it's actually fun. People resonate with you. And I say, and the more I'm going, as I start to talk in the coming year, I think I'm going to focus a lot more on my real story and a lot of my failures, because people like to, I even have a series on my Instagram, Failure Friday, because I have so many failures at school and work and life. And everything. And so it's like, I always say there's almost like two of me, and we all have that. It's like, oh, we can all jump up there on our resume or LinkedIn and say, I did this and I got this award and I did that and I did that was great and that was amazing. But then, or we can tell the other story of everything that we did wrong. And here's the laws I broke. And here's how I got kicked out of school and the failures. But it turns out a lot of people love to hear the real real side of you and the authentic. And so I tell people when they're nervous, yeah, just be authentic.
Absolutely.
If nothing else. So that leads us kind of into this conference. How did this just, well, you had already been doing, I know, some smaller events, but this was like a massive event at Gaylord Palms, which is just a, top tier resort. Did you, were you just thinking, oh, maybe I should do this, or how, maybe tell us some background on how it all came together?
Yeah, you know what? I went to a conference January 2021. And it's a coach. His name is David Imonitier, and I went to his conference, and he was up there, telling his story, right, and telling his message to the crowd, to the attendees that were there. And I remember getting like teared up, like as he was up there, and as I was looking at, and what it was, after I had to reconcile my feelings, I was emotional seeing somebody living in their purpose, right? Like the fact that he was on stage, he was communicating value, he had a powerful message. And even in his message, he said, write down 10 things that you want to experience in 2021. So I write down these things, right? So I'm writing down all my things. And towards the end of the list, it said to have a tax and accounting conference. I had no idea how I was going to do it. It was, unthinkable at the time, January 2021. But I remember just being at his event. He had a gala. It was pretty. I literally mimicked my event off of his event. Right. He had this beautiful gala with the plated dinners, and I was just sitting there the whole time, like in awe of the impact that he was having on his community. And so I knew that, deep down, I was like, I would love to have my own tax and accounting conference to have that type of impact on people. And because there's something about being in a room, right? It's like a different message. It's a different feeling outside of like Zoom and the phone and the internet. Like when you're in the room, like people's lives literally change. Like you could tell them the same thing on Zoom and then see them in person and say the exact same thing, and it just resonates with them. It's like life-changing for them. So I knew that going into it. And so obviously life got away from me 2021. I started multiple businesses. I was going down a lot of different avenues. I'm still coaching and training. And towards the end of the year, probably like the end of September, I said, Krista, and I'm looking at all these goals that I didn't hit, those 10 things. It was just 10 things on that list. And I'm like looking at the list like I didn't do anything on this list this year. And I felt so defeated. And I said, you got to keep your word to yourself, right? If you say you're going to do something to yourself, like keep your word with yourself, like you keep your word with other people, like you keep your word with your clients. And so I said, you're going to have this conference. I don't care if it's only 2 people that show up, but you're going to have this conference this year, 2021. So literally the end of September, I ended up contacting the event planner who I met at another conference just a month earlier, which was coincidence, right? It was just all in alignment. And I said, hey, I want to throw in this conference. The date is going to be the beginning of December. Like, do you think I could make it happen? And she was like, sure, right? Because she's not going to turn down a client. She's like, absolutely, we can make it work, right? Let's do it. So we were only really planning at the end of the day for like maybe 250 people, right? Like we were like, okay, well, if we at minimum we can get 250. The goal was 1,000, but it was really tight. It was like, okay, we have literally 59 days to get 1,000 people to fly, still in the pandemic, to Florida, right? And so, honestly, it just started with a goal, a desire. One, I saw witness to someone else, right? I saw someone else doing what I wanted to do. And I think that planted the seed of belief for me. And I said, if he can do it, I can do it. Right. And then it just took me to make a commitment to say, I'm going to get this done. Whether we have 40 days or 2 weeks, like I'm going to get this done. And, as you guys know, it happened.
It happened and it was amazing. And by the way, that idea, the 10 things, I've heard that before. That's a great idea. If people are listening to this on Valentine's Day, give yourself a Valentine's Day present and make that list, because the year is still young. And
Mhm.
I may try that myself. Think of okay, what are the 10 things with, I may even do it with my wife. Let's say, okay, what are 10
Yes.
things we want to have happen this year? I've already got a couple of big things on my horizon. I know you have big things as well. Let's jump in, because I want to cut into skilled pro, that as well as, so teaching, training, but also these platforms. And at the time, some of those platforms I know were at the event, and I didn't connect even two and two. Usually, you get an event and there are vendors at the event,
Yeah.
but those are so you've developed software as well. So maybe tell us about Skilled Pro and the software as well, because it's really amazing.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, after personally talking to thousands of tax and accounting pros, like obviously you start to hear problems that they like, recurring issues that they have. One of them is they're introverts, right?
Yeah.
The other one was around various solutions that they were using. Like they were like, man, we have to use so many softwares, there's so many different solutions. They kept asking like, where is just one solution, to handle and manage our virtual firm? And so after hearing that problem over and over again, that's when I decided, I was like, you know what, let's create it. Because we looked at, kind of some of the softwares that were on the market, and we were asking our clients how they actually like those softwares. And so feedback was just, it was too complicated. It was too much money. It was always something.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, let's see if we can create a solution for them. And so that's where we created Onboardable, which is a virtual practice management software to help people just manage their workflow and onboard any client, right? Whether it's tax, bookkeeping, tax resolution, tax planning, and they can manage that workflow end to end, the onboarding and offboarding process. And then, I think my lesson this year going forward, because last year we did create several, actually in 2020, we created 4 different software platforms, and we realized maybe that wasn't the best idea to create, because in essence they're 4 different businesses, right? And
Yeah.
so one of the things that we actually did this year was condense down our product offerings, right? So this year we only have our 2 platforms that we are focused on, but the 2 main platforms are Certifiable, which is just our training platform. That's where my coaching is done. And then we have ProLendly, which really was birthed from COVID, so we helped a lot of pros help different businesses obtain SBA and
Yeah.
PPP and EIDL, and they liked to offer that service. They were like, we really like to offer capital consulting. And so I'm like, you know what? Let's see if we could create a solution where after PPP and EIDL go away, let's see if we could create a solution to help them offer capital consulting as a part of their firm if they wanted to, because we had literally had thousands of people, or at least upwards to 1,000 pros to say we really like offering this service in our business. And so that's where it started. We wanted to help them. So that platform is geared around, if you are a tax and accounting pro or anyone in the finance industry and you want to help people still source capital or help them build business credit, you can use ProLendly, and ProLendly helps facilitate the entire process, right? We help you help your clients build business credit, right? Obtain their Dun and Bradstreet number, get trade lines, both tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 trade lines, and get funding if they have cash flow. So we connect the pros with these various non-traditional lenders that really, they don't care about your credit. They don't really care about much. They just care if your client is cash flowing per month.
Well, yeah, and that sounds like an amazing service. And so if you're out there as an enrolled agent or any accountant or whatever, and you use ProLendly, then you can, it's one more service that a lot of small businesses are going to really want. And so, and I always talk about it, if you can add any other thing as you're kind of the asset of your company. So if you can now add, you're an enrolled agent, but now you're adding in ProLendly, you're bringing more things to your client, and then they're like, oh, telling you to their friends or
Right,
whatever.
right,
Yeah,
right. Absolutely. And then you got to think about it, like, who has access to all their financials already? Like, who already knows their cash flow? Who already
yeah.
has access to their profit and loss, their balance sheet, their tax returns, right? So capital consulting could be a great, you know, ancillary service that you can offer your clients.
And along with that, on the software, and I've looked, it's funny, I live in Bend, Oregon, where there's a ton of high-tech startups and software companies, and I've even invested in them. And oftentimes it'll go from a startup of 2 or 3 people, and next thing you know, there's 20 engineers over there.
Mhm.
And it's, did you already know coders or software people, or did you, because it's not super simple to create software.
No, no. I was non-technical. I'm still pretty non-technical. I don't know how to, like code. What I did was I did educate myself to the basics, right? So I took a few coding classes. Actually, I went to a coding boot camp that's here local in Michigan. And I just learned what I need to learn about, the project management of, and the life cycle of creating and starting technology. But a lot of our building was just hiring folks, right? Just like we hire, assistants and product managers, we hire software engineers. So that was a process, right? Because it's like, how can you truly hire for something that you don't know how to do?
Yeah.
So a lot of my stuff was just going off like just how clearly they were able to articulate the process, and if they even had a process.
Yeah.
And then a lot of it was like just gut, like just feeling like, do I feel like me and this person is going to jive well over the course of our relationship? And then I did eventually get I hired a human resources person that actually specialized in placing software engineers. So that was the other thing. Even like it was a game changer for my business personally to hire an HR person to actually do the hiring process for me, because we were scaling so fast. We needed to fill so many positions. And like to hire and to interview takes a lot of time and energy. And to have that outsourced was game changer for my business. Yeah. So I would tell folks, just learn what you need to learn, hire someone. But at the end of the day, if you really want to make sure it's quality, go ahead and just hire somebody who can do the hiring for you, but who's a specialist in that field of study that you're looking to hire for.
Well, and so that may be a good time. So right now today, and you don't have to tell me all this, what does your company look like? Are you like got 3 different lines of business, and do you have this massive infrastructure of team, or is it just, are you pretty still small and lean, or do you have a whole bunch of people running departments and different lines of business, or is it all kind of one deal that you're?
Yeah. You know what? Last year, I think that was our issue. We had so many different departments and lines of business and products that my org chart looked ridiculous. And it was just like, wait, what is going on here? But we weren't like progressing the milestones that we wanted to hit, because we were still building the thing, right? We were building a lot of the products and iterating on the products based upon customer feedback. But now getting clear, actually, like I said, this year we've just focused on 2 offerings. That's it. 1 and 2. It's just like training and ProLendly. So 2 offerings, and I already feel the growth that we've been able, just in the beginning of this year, the growth that we've been able to experience just by having like dedicated focus on just 2 offerings as opposed to several different offerings.
And that's a good point too. If you're running your business, whatever it is, there's always, there's a saying, and then whatever in the Bible or anywhere you can find a saying, and then you can find the exact opposite saying, and you're like, which one do I do? And so on the one hand, it's great to just jump in, get revenue streams growing, and you find out maybe the event wasn't good, and you're like, okay, I'm not going to do that again, or maybe it was great, and you can scale that. So yeah, it's great to start a lot of things, but it's also great to focus.
Yeah.
And so knowing and being able to be fluid and get those things sorted out as well. But you got just a lot going on. It's super exciting to see all of it. And I know your audience loves you. Let me ask advice. So let's transfer into advice a little bit. Do you have advice for accountants, CAs, CPAs, anyone attending? Let's focus first on conferences. Because I get that question all the time. So if, say you're in the cannabis niche, there are a gazillion conferences in every big city, small city. And like, which one do I go to? Do I go to them? And then some people want to put a booth, and that costs a lot of money. Some people want to speak. Some people just want to go and meet people. Do you have any advice for accountants? Because you can't, you got to balance that too. And even just this, even a broader knowledge around education, because you can start going to life coach conferences or marketing conferences or all these different conferences. And you got to, invest in yourself, but you also got to, how do you what's your advice on all that?
Absolutely. So I definitely encourage all tax and accounting pros to go to conferences and to be in the rooms, right? Because we said earlier, it's just something different about like being in a room. So, if your niche is cannabis, I would pull up all of the cannabis conferences, seminars, meetings in your local area, as well as, around the country, and start to plot like which ones are most enticing for you. One, we paid a VA to do this, right? We went to Upwork, we paid them $7 an hour, and they actually scrubbed the internet for us to compile all of these events that were happening around our niche. And then now we have a clear picture of what's happening, when it's happening, and now we can meet to say, okay, which one of these are aligned with our business goals, right? And then we choose maybe the top 3, maybe the top 5, depending on if they're local or if you have to travel, or even if you want to travel this year. Definitely do what's best for you and your business, your family, right? Your personal life. Absolutely. Yeah. But we plot which ones we want to go to, and we're like really intentional about that. So just like you said, there's like 3 factors. Are you going to be an attendee? Are you going to get a vendor booth, or are you trying to be a speaker? Obviously, a speaker is a great way to build influence in your niche. Actually, the close rates, right, is about 30% on average when you're speaking from the stage, which means that if you give a really great speech on your niche, you really give value, and then you make an offer for them to either book a call with you or to become a client, you can expect about 30% of the attendees will be interested in your offer, which is really powerful, because the bigger the stage you get on, the more money potentially and clients you'll be able to get. So speaking, and we're doing this for free, right? So what we do, we typically go to these organizers, say, hey, I have this knowledge on cannabis and 280E, and I would love to educate the community on it, and we're willing to come on and speak for free. We get on the stage for free because we know that we can close 30% of the room. So again, if you have 1,000 people in there, you can potentially close 300 people in the room as a client. And so that's what we do on the speaking side. We don't really focus on like collecting a speaker fee. Now, of course, if you get more influence and you get more prestige around your name and you become like a niche celebrity, absolutely start to charge a fee, with whatever your rates are. But the real value is to be in the room and to be perceived as this industry expert and to close the clients in the room. So that's the first option that we like to go to. The second one is the vendor booth. So again, you're going to have anywhere between a 30 and 40% sign up rate. So what we focus on when we get vendor booths, we just want to get leads, right? We're not trying to close them while they're standing in line, right? We're not trying to close them as a client right there, because you haven't built up enough value. A speech, a 30-minute to 1-hour speech, we can build up value and we can close people like that at the end of our speech. But a vendor booth, you don't have that time. You literally only have 2 to 3 minutes to meet someone. So what we do is we have ebooks that are available for them, and it could be, the definitive guide to 280E, so you stay out of federal prison, right? Something fun, something enticing, like it could be a case study on a cannabis company that actually went to prison, right? Because they do like something fun, something enticing. You can have these printed out, spend a couple of $100, and in exchange for this ebook, or not an ebook, it's an actual book, but in exchange for physical thing, you get their name and their email address and their contact. We just want the leads right now, because what we want to do is we want to put them through a nurture sequence, right? Once we get them as a lead, now we know our average close rate is about 10 to 15%. So 10 to 15% of the leads that we get, we close as a client eventually. Rather, some people takes, 60 days, other people take a year at being on our list as a lead, right? But that's the goal. We're not trying to sell them in line. We're just trying to get their contact info in exchange for something valuable. And then an attendee, if you're just going as an attendee, do your homework on who's going to be in the room. Like, do your homework on all the speakers, because your goal is to make strategic alliances. You can align yourself with people in the industry that literally can help you 10x your business. So if I'm just going to be an attendee, I still have a goal to 10x my business through a strategic or multiple strategic alliances. So I like to research who's speaking, because I love to meet those folks, right? I want to go up to them and I want to thank them, but I also want to plug in something personal that I might know about them, or something that I found online that was interesting, right? And so I want to make those alliances, because this could be like one partnership like that. They can literally send you dozens and dozens of clients over the life of this relationship. And then, of course, if you're also attending as only an attendee, you want to make sure you work the room, right? You have to speak up and introduce yourself. Literally, one person can change your life. One person can change your life and send you a multiple six-figure lead, or multiple clients that are multiple six figures in revenue for you. You never know who you meet. So don't be afraid to just walk up to people to say, hey, how are you enjoying the conference so far? Or what's your top takeaway so far? Or which speaker are you really looking forward to speaking with, right? Or how long have you been in business? Like, it really doesn't matter what you say, just say something to as many people as you can to build that relationship, and then make sure you get their contact info by way of social media. So we don't do business cards, right? We actually just look them up on LinkedIn. We pull them up on Facebook, on Instagram, and we exchange our contact info that way. And after the conference, you want to make sure you follow up, right? Make sure you follow up to say, hey, Andrew, it was so good meeting you at the Canna conference. It was absolutely amazing. I would love to hop on a quick 15-minute chat to see what type of clients you are accepting, so I could potentially send your way, right? So I'm getting on a coffee chat with everyone that I'm meeting, because I want to see what value can I give to them, right? And then as you're on the phone, it's naturally going to go the other way. They now want to see what value they can give to you. And this is how you start cultivating these deeper connections, being an attendee.
So that's amazing. I'm, by the way, taking lots of notes, because I'm dying to even tell my group about some of the things you said. And then also, I can't wait till this episode comes out to share it with everybody, because you're just giving so much. You talk about value, you're giving tons of value. And also, just you're demonstrating what an amazing businesswoman you are. In just, so for example, just knowing whether you're attending, or just the whole way you just described going to events is way deeper than I've ever looked at. And you're like, the close rate at speaker versus booth versus attendee, but you also see that there's value to be obtained at every level. So there's no right or wrong answer. If you're just an attendee, and even the attendee, that's what you just said, creating those alliances, that one person that can change your life. I've seen that in my life. Probably most people have. It just takes one random connection, and then you never know at the time, but then when you look back 20 years, you can pinpoint, my current wife that I met 21 years ago was just a fluke. A guy that was like 6 years older than me in high school ran into me and told me a guy was hiring at Grant Thornton, and it just was crazy. It's just like a chance meeting. It ended up moving from Pricewaterhouse to Grant Thornton, moving cities. I met my wife a month later and we got married real quickly. So it's just like, but the same thing for the client side. You meet, you never take these for granted. And way back when I was part of B2B CFO 2010, and they said, oh, just go to coffee, go have coffee with the banker, the lawyer. And I hated it. It's like, oh, I don't want to go to another one. This guy at Wells Fargo that was very junior, he was like, had to be like 25. And he just kept bugging me to go to coffee, and I kept putting him off. And finally I went to coffee, and I mean, sure enough, like the next day he sent me a client that I got $250,000 off of 3 years later. He just handed them to me on a silver platter. It was a great client that I worked part-time, just like one day a month on helping them get ready for exit. I made a ton of money, and it was just like, oh, this guy that I thought, you never know who's going to give you that value. So this is a ton of useful stuff. And I want, and you probably deal with this too. The I can't remember where it is on, it's Notre Dame or maybe Oklahoma Sooners, where they had the big sign, they go out into the tunnel to play the game. It's like no excuses. You lose the game, it's not, oh, well, it was the ref, or is this? And I get a lot of people having excuses. Well, I can't find a client. And well, are you participating? Are you getting involved? Are you doing these different things? Are you going to an event? Okay. Then the next step is, and this kind of goes back to that Martin Luther King quote. If you're at an event, okay, maybe you can't speak yet. Maybe you can't afford a booth, but you can attend. And not only attending, are you actually, like you said, you can research the speakers and you can go. So say I'm an accountant and I show up at a big cannabis event, and guess who some of the speakers are? Owners of farms and dispensaries. Are you actually staying in that little line after their talk to introduce yourself and say,
Yeah.
hey, I love that I knew this about your company, and I didn't really think that through, where you can go up and just meet some of these owners right then and there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And never know, because I've had people be like, oh, I need you, or oh, we'll connect later on. And they'll be like, wait, I actually need you because my person doesn't do this and I actually need these services. You know what I'm saying? Like it turns
Yeah.
into something.
So it's just, yeah, make sure you're just doing something, you're working. Yes, if you don't have clients, the way I tell people is like, if you don't have a client, and now I know you got to put food on the table, but say you don't have a client and you're working part-time waiting tables or whatever, it still gives you a lot of time. So your business time, the good news is you're not spending any time doing bookkeeping or taxes. So you got a lot of time to do these other things.
Yeah, to do your marketing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and even if you don't like it, it's like get out there and do it. I know we're hitting, this has been a really long podcast, but we're having so much fun, and I want to be
Thank
cognizant
you.
of your time. I know we got a couple more. We're going to give everyone a chance to where to find you everywhere. And by the way, we'll have links, all that in our show notes as well. Let's talk real quickly about your personal brand. What do you think was the most effective in growing your personal brand, and what do you wish had gone a little bit better? Because you're definitely great at building your brand.
Oh, thank you. You know what? I wasn't ever really intentional about building my personal brand until last year. I actually hired a personal brand coach. Okay.
Okay.
Listen, I always identify my areas of opportunities, and I just hire people to teach me these things or hire people to do the job for me now, which is game changer for people that are growing right at scale. But she asked me a few questions. She said, one, she's like, who are you without all of this, without accounting, without tax, without the EA, like who are you at the end of the day? And I was like, I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't know who I am without these things, right? This has defined my life, for the past 12, 15 years. And so that was a homework, that she assigned to me. She was like, I need you to understand like who you are without these things, what do you stand for? And get really clear on, at the end of the day, who you are, right? And then the second thing was just having that brand presence. She said, when I Google you, Facebook comes up, Instagram might come up, your LinkedIn might come up, but she's like, you need to have your own website. Like you need to own ChristaTyus.com. Right. And I was like, why? Like I'm doing fine without it. She's just like, well, this is, again, you're building, you are outside of your company. Like you have your own, like your life's mission, your life's purpose. Like, what is that? And you want to make sure that when people go and search you, they find that. They just don't find Facebook or Instagram. They actually find ChristaTyus.com. And actually it's going to rank higher, because if they're searching Crysta Tyus, then my website should be the first thing to pop up. So when she told me all these things, I just took it, I paid her for this knowledge, for those 2 nuggets. So I was like, okay, great, let me do that. So I created a logo. But I've noticed that, and I get leads from that website every single month. I'm surprised at how many people Google me. I'm so surprised by that, because literally hundreds of leads would come into that website every single month. They might not find, certifiable or pro-lendly, but they will always find ChristaTyus.com.
Yes.
And
Awesome.
they would send in a lead to say, hey, I want to learn more about how I can work with you. But that was game changer, just having somebody tell me like I need to start building it, being intentional about building my brand on who I am, outside of these companies, outside of my training program, because at the end of the day, if that's gone, what is left? Like what do I stand for? You know what I'm saying? So
Well, that's awesome advice. And one theme that's coming up throughout, and this is the way with any successful people, is you're always investing in yourself. You're learning. You will, whether it's hiring a new person or taking a program or hiring a coach, you'll do that. I've done the exact same for 20 years. Whether I'm going to night school or going to see Tony Robbins or paying Andrew Argue for his program, I've done tons of programs. But I just look at all education and skills and programs as good, and there's all different prices. I mean, you can pay $100,000, you can go buy a book at Barnes and Noble, and that's $10. They're still all good. And I tell people when they ask me, they complain about the cost or something of a program, it's like, you should be looking at return on investment. This isn't a cost. So your education and your asset of you is not a cost, it's an investment. Yeah, when you go buy a TV, that's a cost. But if you're investing in yourself, it's an investment. So you could still make a crappy investment. You could pay someone $10,000 and it's a waste of time. And so you want to vet your investments, but you want to be thinking about payback and return on investment. And invariably the people that are successful, someone just turned me on to Alex Hormozy, who's been a very successful in the gym coaching arena. And I've watched a bunch of his videos now, and he's still to this day, he's, got $100 million firm, but he pays Grant Cardone to coach him. And I think he talks about this on YouTube. It's like, yeah, I pay him $30,000 an hour. And he's like, but he's like, he gives me value. And so, but for the level I'm at, then I'm at this level and I want to go to billionaire, then I need to be talking to those people. So I love hearing that, just about education, always improving yourself and looking where you got opportunities to grow. And I tell people that too, because I know CPAs that are totally unorganized. Or not responsive or not good on their email or time management. Is like, you've always got something to work on. And you're a great example, and on bringing in that team as well to grow.
Absolutely. Game
so
changer.
You mentioned CrystaTyus.com. I think we will wrap up. I'm going to let you tell anything else you want to share, but also where we will have the links, but where can people easily find you if they're driving in the car? What's the easiest way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, I would say definitely Crysta Tyus EA on YouTube if you want to check, more about marketing and social media, how to do live video, all that good stuff. And then of course the website CrystaTyus.com. That's a great place to start. That'll point you to the other products and services that we have.
Okay, well, that is so awesome. This has been a really good one. I've taken a lot of notes. I want to jump in, and I'm going to be telling my group, right, because it's relevant. People are going to events right now, and I'm like, okay, this is what Krista says you need to do. And I'm going to be holding people accountable. Don't tell me you just went to that event. Who'd you meet and what'd you do? I want to get the dirty details. So this has been just, a great podcast. So excited to finally get it. I mean, even at the event, I know you were just slammed at Orlando. So I met a ton of people, but I know we barely got to talk because it was just like crazy. But I'm so glad we got to meet. And
thank you.
Any final words? I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, let's connect at Tax and Accounting Summit 2022 in December in Orlando.
December, and yes, that's I will be there. I'm plugging for that too. It's right after, it's actually a great time. It's that first week in December. It's super fun in Orlando. The conference resort is amazing, and the energy is so high and it's so much fun. Yes. Great speakers as well. So awesome. Well, thank you so much. And we will.
Thank you, Andrew.